For our fourth reading room live stream. Exciting. Looks like we have it live on YouTube and X, so people who are in the waiting room should be able to join right now. Amazing, amazing. Well, great to see everybody. I'm going to open the chat here, and everyone who is joining on the public chat will be able to leave their comments here. So exciting news, we just passed 15,000 subscribers, so this is amazing. I'm super humbled and super blessed to have so many people interested in great literature joining in the conversation here. And so I'm super happy to be able to do this, be able to host the reading room, be able to host the YouTube, and talk about books day in and day out. Now I do have a hard out today, so this isn't gonna go the full hour. This is only gonna go 45 minutes because I have the book club meeting immediately after that. We're going to be discussing Watership Down. So I'm super excited. This is the first time I read this book, just finished it. Definitely dark for a children's book. For those of you guys who have read this one, this is considered a work of children's literature, particularly by Richard Adams. He wrote it for his kids, but it is incredibly dark. There's war, there's death, there's destruction, there's battles, there's so much stuff that we're not used to seeing, I think, in children's literature. I'm really excited to discuss this with the book club today. Hopefully some of you guys will be able to join if you are members of the book club, and if not, I encourage you to consider joining in the future. If you're interested, you can even just read along if you don't want to. But Watership Down, I would highly recommend this book for those who haven't read it, but be careful. It's not going to be an easy introduction to children's literature. By the way, great children's literature is just great literature. We could get rid of the word children's in there. Still, I think it's necessary because I want to spread the love for children's literature and let people know that it's worth reading and every bit as valuable as classic literature, quote unquote, however we consider these. Awesome. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, thank you so much. I have a lot of fun making this channel, and it's amazing to see how many people just really love classic books and to talk about great books. We started a series a few weeks ago, just the top books by genre, and that one has been doing really well. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are for anybody who's in the public chat. Are you guys enjoying that series? Is that kind of in line with what you'd like to see more of? I've done one on the classic adventure books, post-apocalyptic books, top mystery books, and I have a couple more coming up soon. So stick around if you want more of those kinds of introductory kind of. They're not only introductory, I guess. It's deep dives on my own from my own perspective. But yeah. Markham says we raised tougher children then. Yeah, that's probably true. It's interesting when that shift kind of happened, the helicopter parenting shift, where we took a different approach to raising children. On some level, it was my generation, but also my generation kind of was straddling that. I think we got the free range childhood because those that were born between like the 1990 and 2005 kind of range, I think you still grew up without social media. You still grew up without the total helicopter parent approach. So I think we got a little bit of that, but that was when it was starting to be a little bit more elbow and knee pads on everything. But it's interesting, right? I mean, Watership Down is really, really more than just a raising tough kids. It's like these are challenging adult themes. But I think great works of children's literature always explored challenging adult themes. I mean, even when I think about like Washington Irving works that you read to kids too, like those are challenging and not so accessible perhaps today. I think it's the same reason why when we look at the kind of brain rot shows that kids watch today, it's not so good for your soul. It's not so good for your mind. When we look at the older shows, like the ones I grew up on, the ones that previous generations grew up on, there was some substance and challenging questions and things that today you would say, oh, you can't have that explored by kids. But I think any element of human experience, not any element, most elements of human experience that are explored by adults can really be explored by children as well, but they're going to look at it through their own lenses. I don't have it accessible right now, but There's a famous Spanish kind of poem children's book called Platero y Yo, or Platero and I. It's about a donkey and a man on this that are traveling. And on the back of the book, there's a quote, a passage from the book where the author says that I don't consider this work a work of children's literature because children can read anything that adults can read, with certain exceptions. And I always thought that's exactly the way that we should put it, right? Children's literature is just great literature, but it isn't going to explore certain elements of like the really dark aspects of human nature. Watership Down goes a little bit into some of those areas, but even Watership Down doesn't touch on things that some adult literature would. So, anyways, finally made it to a live. I'm glad that you were able to make it. So glad to have you here. Enjoyed the video on the top 10 books I'd take to a desert island. Yeah, that was a recent one. I was thinking about that the other day because so many, I think every reader at some point in our career will be confronted with this question of the desert island reading picks. And usually it's like one or two, but I was like, I couldn't just do a video on one or two. I don't know which one. I mean, I'd probably just say like Shakespeare in the Bible or something. Like, okay, that's not really an interesting video. It's like what everyone would say. But if I had to choose like 10 books, what would those be? The ones that the only books that you get to read for the rest of your life. And sticking to fiction, of course, because once I expand it into nonfiction and other things, it gets impossible. This list would just expand to 100 books for sure, very quickly. But I think it's an interesting idea. Definitely one that I would like to see explored more by some of my favorite book talk people, whatever, book reviewers. I think book reviewers is a better way to call it on YouTube, because YouTube's it's definitely a different crowd than what I notice with other social media platforms where we're talking about literature. We can go a lot deeper and people still enjoy, people still watch. You don't have to have like a 5-second hook or something like that. You can just talk to the camera, and you don't need to, you can just be authentic, be yourself, and people I think like that, and they resonate with it, and I resonate with it. I know a lot of the people that I watch and that I'm inspired by just take a very similar approach. It's not necessarily the most refined or the most edited. I'm trying to get better at the editing aspect of it. I did study film a little bit in school, so I have some editing skills, but it's like I don't have the editing software that I need to do so much. So maybe I'll add like an image of a book if I forgot to show the physical copy of it. Although sometimes I do forget to do that, so bear with me if I ever do that in the future. But yeah, I think it's just such an amazing environment to be able to be a part of, to be able to build. And I'm really looking forward to the future. I think the future of this is there are so many people who love books and are just tired of the scroll and the endless social media and the endless, commoditization of everything. And substantive, deep, engaging literary environments, I think there's a big future for them. And I'm excited. And hopefully also, like as a writer, I'll be able to share some of my own works with people that like my taste, and that's a good kind of proxy. Like if you like my taste in books, then you might like my taste in writing as well. So anyways, I think that's pretty good. Yay on a new live. Did I grow up on Wishbone? I actually didn't really. Great series though, but I didn't really grow up on it. I think the only time I read it was like when I was in high school or maybe a bit older. So yeah, no. But some of my favorite children's books are ones that I encountered as adults. I know C.S. Lewis famously said this about The Wind in the Willows. I think he encountered it first time in his late 20s. For me it was in my early 20s, but similar kind of idea. I didn't read it as a kid, and it's one of my favorite books. I don't think you need to grow up on something. Like we're going to read the Phantom Tollbooth next month in the book club. Never read it before, but I'm excited. Like I'm genuinely super excited to read it. And I think in terms of my own writing too, I write different genres, but whenever I'm able to write something like that's a children's tale, there's a number of reasons I think it's especially meaningful. You can't hide in being overly literary, right? You can't just hide behind long sentences and all these different structures and allusions and metaphors and whatnot. You have to keep it simple. And so you really have to refine yourself and understand what you're trying to say and what the story is, and say it in the most efficient way possible. E.B. White talks a lot about this in his book on writing. It's called Elements of Style. And his theory is definitely minimalist, like get rid of adjectives whenever possible. Most writers, there's different theories working, but when you're writing for kids, like you don't want Faulkner-esque sentences, right? You don't want like 3-page long sentences necessarily. And there's nothing wrong with the maximalist style as well, but or even the kind of Hemingway minimalist style is not really work for children's either. Like it just has to be a simple kind of cadence style. Anyways, very cool, very fun, and I really enjoy that aspect. Lingle noted that no publisher today would allow soporific in Peter rapping too hard. Yeah, probably true. Probably true. The linguistic range that we would have in children's literature has definitely diminished. I think there are a lot of works like older. The problem is all the ones that I read are older ones, right? So all the older ones that I've read definitely have like really great vocabulary. But when you read newer children's work, it's super, super simple. It doesn't have to be that simple though. I think it needs to be simple, but not overly simplified. There are some children's books these days that deal with tough situations like divorce, bullying. Yeah, make it easier for kids to understand. I think that's true. And we're speaking in generalities here, and we should never speak in generalities, but it's what I'm doing. So I guess I'm breaking my own rule right away. The problem is you have to speak in generalities a lot of times because otherwise you can't say anything, right? If it's like, well, every situation is so nuanced in such a way that we can never really say anything definitively. Well, you just said definitively that you can say anything definitively, so now you got this whole problem. So it's a it's a catch-22. But yes, I do think there are works in the modern canon that will probably be remembered, hopefully, that definitely deal with tougher situations that are exceptions to the rule. I would say that the actual amount of children's literature that I've read that was written in the last, let's say, 10 years is relatively small. So I'm not speaking at this from a massive sample size. I'm speaking at this more from maybe a sample size of what you see recommended, popular-wise, what's on TV, etc. What else we got here? C.S. Lewis said something along the lines that fairy story might have told children of dangers, but also let them know there were heroes too. Yeah, I think that it's super important to note that you give courage and a lot of these mental resilience and skills that children require when you allow them to read children's literature that explores difficult themes. If we never explore difficult themes, we're not really preparing our children for the future. And I'm speaking generally here because I don't have children of my own yet, God willing soon, but this is definitely not one of the priorities, I think, of our generation, to prepare children for hard worlds. No, it's to protect children from a challenging world more often. And of course, both are important, but I think great works of children's literature remind us that we read them when we're kids to grow, and we read them as adults to grow even more. So sometimes growth requires us to return to our childhood ways, and sometimes growth also requires us to expand our minds beyond childhood. So a great work of children's literature will allow us to do both. Dr. Johnson, no man but a blockhead ever wrote Save for Money. Fair enough. He's got some good quotes. He's got some really good ones. In the BBC program Desert Island Discs, the person has to choose a book, but we're told the Bible and Shakespeare were already on the island. That makes sense. I mean, everyone's already going to choose those, so that keeps it from being redundant. Nancy Drew, never read them as a kid, but enjoying them as adults. Yeah, the Nancy Drew books were great. Okay, good question. Should I push myself to try and enjoy nonfiction more? I want to become a more well-rounded reader, but 99% of everything I read is fiction. A lot of people have this problem in both directions. I've met a number of people who basically only read nonfiction, and they have to be told the value of fiction, the potential of spiritual and human growth from reading great works of fiction in order to really convince them to read it. So you don't have to be told that, which is good. That's a good place to start. I think All things considered, fiction, a great work of fiction, will give you much more than a nonfiction work in terms of your ability to grow, in terms of your ability to understand deeper human spiritual truths that are underneath the surface. However, nonfiction books give you very practical knowledge. If you're studying history, it gives you very specific knowledge about an event that actually happened that you can then use to inform your decisions in life, and that's important. I think studying history is one of the most essential things we could do. Studying economics, similarly, will give us a better understanding of the way that the world works, so that we don't become naive and we don't fall into these traps of thinking, the kind of unconstrained vision of the world, where it's like everything's possible. It's like a lot of things are possible, and yeah, it's really good to have that mentality, but you have to understand basic realities of the world as well. Reading biographies gives us a lot of depth into other people's lives and what we can learn from them, what we can glean from them, similarly with memoirs. So my recommendation is, if you really like fiction and you want to get into nonfiction, you could start with narrative nonfiction, right? You could start with like Truman Capote's In Cold Blood as an example. It's not historically or even maybe what you would agree with morally, but it's very well written, very interesting, and it will remind you that, oh wow, great works of nonfiction can be very enjoyable to read as well, because sometimes we don't like them because they feel stuffy and old or whatever. They're not written in the same evocative style, although lots of fiction, I guess, could be written poorly as well. But yeah, I would encourage you to push yourself to read things that you're uncomfortable reading, because you'll grow as a person. You don't necessarily have to read only nonfiction or fiction. You can grow by reading more fiction as well. Oh, Markham already beat me to it. He said that lots of good nonfiction reads like a novel. Yeah. The Wager, yeah. The Wager is one that I've been meaning to read for a long, long time. So that one's high on my list. Love the detailed descriptions in Dickens. Dickens is great. Yeah, he's one of the best practitioners of prose in the English language, for sure. Let's see. Lots of comments here. Sorry if I don't get to everyone's. Just going through, making sure. It's also comforting to read children's literature sometimes. Absolutely. I think great children's literature can be both comforting and challenging, but it's rooted in comfort. Like, you don't go to children's literature to be challenged necessarily. As an example that I feel has become obligatory on every single live stream and every event I ever do. If I'm reading The Wind in the Willows again, I'm not going to read this because I want to be challenged. I'm going to read this because I want to feel peace. I want to feel, you want to have beautiful illustrations. And there's multiple versions of it, right, that have really great illustrations. It's that sense of homeliness with Mr. Badger's home, or other places as well. But there's also adventure elements, and there are things that you can learn about what you're doing well and not doing well in life that can force you to grow as well. So even reading kind of comforting children's literature can really force us to grow. And man, I'm trying to pick a book from the middle of a pile without anything falling. So did it. Success. Another one, Markham mentioned L'Engle before, but A Wrinkle in Time is one I personally really like. And this is one that I think forces you to think about your faults and your failures and the value of faults and failures as well. So yeah, absolutely. It helps you to grow, but much more as well. Bridge to Terabithia. Yeah. The no book entries. So sometimes when a book becomes so successful that it's made into movies or multiple movies, people forget that it was a book originally, and this is a great tragedy. This is also just a factor of how Google works. So the most popular version of a thing is going to be the thing that comes up the most. So I'm sure there are many other Benjamin Lairds in the world, as an example, and maybe many of them are as or more meritorious of getting you to know what they do. But if I have a larger audience, then when you Google that name, it's going to come up first. It's kind of the same with films. The film doesn't necessarily have to be better. If it's just bigger, then it's going to be the first one that comes up. I use that as an example just because I was doing that the other day, and I was like, oh, that's interesting that there are other ones that come up, and some of them seem to have really interesting careers or things that they're working on. But yeah, so with books, unfortunately, some of the great books are forgotten. I recently posted a note on my Substack. It was there was a W.H. Auden quote that I basically paraphrase all the time. And I found the actual quote, and so I quoted it on Substack. But basically, he says, there are many books that are unjustly forgotten, but no books are unjustly remembered. So every book that's remembered is remembered for a reason, even ones that were like, oh, that's not a good book. There's some reason why it's remembered, but there are so many books that are not so remembered that should be more remembered. And with a platform like this, I also have the opportunity to try and spread the love for books that maybe are not so remembered, so that other people will like and read them. And I know a number of people that I enjoy in the book space have like been able to almost single-handedly bring books that were forgotten back into a public conversation. So I know sometimes it can just be one reader really reading something and engaging with it and recognizing the essential humanity or essential depth of a work and bringing it back to our attention. But unfortunately, there are other books like The Destruction of the Library of Alexandria that just, they're gone. We don't have any access to them. So through the distillations of war and time and whatnot, we lose a lot of books that we should have. And the books that remain with us, they become more important the longer they remain with us. Not just because of how great the book is, but because of how many resonances and allusions then lead into other books. And so that book becomes a foundation stone on which other books are built in our civilization. And so, yeah, I want to do a video on this in the not too distant future, what I think are the 10 most important books for our civilization, for Western civilization, or for the world. It's a very ambitious idea, and there aren't really 10 books that you could choose, and it depends on how you frame it. You could frame it like, if you would really do it, it would probably just be 10 books that are written between 2,000 and 5,000 years ago. That would be one way to frame it, or another way to frame it would be kind of the 10 modern branches, so like 10 books of the last century that really kind of branched into all the different important literary movements. Or you could do, I think what I'll probably end up doing, one book from each kind of movement, each jump in the history of literature that kind of is emblematic, is kind of a synecdoche of that entire transformation, if we have to choose just one. But anyways, it's another tangent there. So many tangents, but I'm going to go back on track here. Yes, but you have to pen book now. Shows the cultural shift. Yes, that's back to the earlier conversation that we have to sometimes add book instead of movie. So the cultural conversation is shifting, but it's also shifting back. There's more Barnes and Nobles opening this year than in any year in the last decade, I believe. And yeah, a lot of people are reading again. It's not necessarily like a wave yet, but it's encouraging, and we are on that track, so we can help by being a part of this. The more we engage in this kind of content, the more we make it, the more we are able to convince others to view it, the more that then becomes part of the Google conversation, right? And that Google conversation changes how companies engage, because they say, oh, there's some interest here, and they invest in it. And so it's the capitalist way of approaching making books readable again. We might want to like snub our noses on that and look down on it and say it's not really worth doing. Like, great literature is only an elite, like it's only for the people who really appreciate it. And to let you in on a secret, great books has never been a popular thing. It's always been kind of a niche interest. But we can use these tools. We can use attention and popularity in order to encourage other people to do good things, like read and like think more about their lives. So I think I don't stub my nose on that. I think it's a great way to approach this. Some of the best works on philosophy and politics have been fiction. 100%. Most of the best ones. Well, maybe not most, but many. I think you'll love the Wager. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. The Hobbit used to be for kids 5 to 9. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's changed maybe, but it still could be. Winn-Dixie. So good. Another great one. Okay, good question. Does my copy of The Wind in the Willows have the chapter The Piper at the Gates Dawn? Of course. Yeah. I've noticed that some newer editions have gotten rid of that, but that is that's crazy. I mean, never buy most big editions have it. But, if you have an edition that doesn't have it, that's a major red flag. Not good at all. Okay. Yeah, a lot of people saying they weren't aware of that. Maybe we should talk a little bit more about that, why that is the case. It's an interesting conversation. Editors, unfortunately, do sometimes try to dumb down children's books, And they really miss the whole point that we're trying to smarten up children, not dumb them down. That's literally the whole point of why they're reading. So, yeah. I try to support small bookstores before Barnes and Noble. Yeah, I think that's important. Recently, I haven't really been having like links in my videos for people can purchase books, but I've had some smaller bookstore companies reach out to me and like, can you put integration so that people can buy them instead of on Amazon to go into the smaller stores? So I'm going to try to do that moving forward as well, just as an option. Like people can buy it wherever they want to buy it. I'm not trying to be the police here and say, or even if they don't want to buy it, you could just get it in your library. That's another great thing to do. I'm super big on supporting local libraries. But I do think if you do want to buy a book, there is something to be said about buying it from a smaller book vendor if you can. I don't think there's anything wrong with buying from Barnes and Noble or from Amazon, for the record. I think that um, I think that what would be a tragedy is if they became the only sellers that could make it work. Practically speaking, I don't think this is going to happen. I'm a bit of an optimist on this, but I already see the signs that a lot of people don't really like that necessarily. And they just sell so many things. They're like Amazon started as an online book seller, right? But they sell so many things that they're never going to just be the only place that you buy books. Like I buy books on Amazon, but I buy a lot of books in local bookstores as well, and I buy books, from Barnes and Noble sometimes, and I'll buy books from library book sales or wherever great books are available. I think we don't want to limit ourselves in terms of knowledge that we have access to. And we should also acknowledge that sometimes it's cheaper to buy it on Amazon, and not everyone can afford to do the local bookshops. So if that is the case, then you shouldn't shame people. But local bookshops tend to try to make it competitive as well, and they have their advantages. You get better editions, you get better experience, so it is worth it, I think, if you are able to. And realistically speaking, you just buy one less coffee and get a book there or something like that. I do think it's worth it to make that adjustment, but also just not to shame people if they don't choose to take a different route. That's my kind of general approach with it. Generally speaking, yeah, a lot of people say they go to local before they go to the big chains. Yeah. My concentration can be bad at times, so I DNF books that don't quickly engage me. It's an interesting point. There are a lot of books that I've read that I'm really glad to have read, but I don't necessarily feel that I enjoyed reading them. So there is something to be said about sticking with it if you know that a book is really good and that it offers the promise that you're really looking for. You have to get clear on why you're reading the book. Now, sometimes you're taking a chance on a book and you're just trying it. In that case, it's okay to DNF it early if you don't like it. You could stick to the 50-page rule if you really want to give it a shot, like read 50 pages before you choose whether you're going to finish it or not finish it. But life is short, and it's also long, depends on how you look at it, but life can be short. And there are certainly way more books worth reading than the amount of time that you will have to read them. So I would say don't feel bad if you don't finish a book, but also one of the challenges I could run into for myself is if I don't finish a book and I don't finish many books, it's like I could have read 3 books well in the same time that I just kind of have a graveyard of half-read books, and did I get anything out of that time? So you have to also recognize how your own mind works. Sometimes it's better to stick through with things just to force yourself to finish it so that I'm able to complete projects and then you move on to the next thing. But yeah, so many books that are worth reading that so you're never going to be able to get through all of them. Let's see what else we got here. I am lucky New England has a lot of small bookstores. This is really something I envy about the New England area. A lot of great readers in New England, a lot of small bookstores. It's a cultural thing. It's really, really known around the world that New England's one of the best places for that. So that's awesome. My local bookshop won the best bookshop in Ireland 24 and 2026. Awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, a lot of Ireland and the UK also have a lot of towns or villages or areas where you have so many bookstores. So that's really cool to see that culturally changing. I see this in Canada as well. Like Toronto is certainly seeing some growth in bookstores, and maybe other cities as well. We might have to be a part of that solution at one point. Maybe I'll have to look at what that would look like opening. I'm sure it's not an easy project, but having more local bookstores is definitely good. And having bookstores that represent kind of an individual taste, I think could be even better, because you don't want just every bookstore that you go to be the same books. And this was one of the problems with Barnes and Noble. They actually changed it now, where local Barnes and Nobles are allowed to choose their own catalog. So they're becoming a little bit more like the smaller bookstores in that respect. I still think the smaller independent bookstores have an advantage because they really are able to be totally based on their clientele and unique in their area. But yeah, it's pretty cool. What is this? The closest local bookstore is approximately 0 miles away. Is that what that is? I hope it's 0 miles away. That'd be awesome. Oh no, 10 miles away. Oh yeah, that's not as close. If it was 0 miles away, I'd be there every day. I would never leave. I would probably just live in the bookstore. This is a problem. Um, all right, all right, all right. Awesome. New York City as well has a lot of good bookstores. Yes, this is true. This is true. So, half year in review, I thought this was one of the things that I wanted to touch on. I'm curious what everyone else has read so far. We're more than half a year in, right? We're almost at the end of July. I should have really done this in the first week of July, but better late than never. Books that we've read this year that we've really loved. First one, The Wind in the Willows. Read this again this year. That was great. I reread The Count of Monte Cristo. Big reread. Man, this book is so good. Every time I read, like everyone on Book Talk or BookTube talks about this book, but it's so good. It really is recommended for a reason. I reread A Wrinkle in Time this year as well. That was a good one. I've been reading through some of Robert Frost's poems recently. I'm always kind of on the go, but I've dove in a little bit more in the last few weeks, and I love this edition. I just think it's so beautiful. What is the edition called? It is the Canterbury Classics edition. But anyways, I just think it's beautiful. And I reread the Odyssey and the Iliad very recently. I'm gonna definitely talk about those at some point in the not too distant future. So just finished Watership Down, just finished A Gentleman in Moscow right here. That's a really good one too. Highly recommend. I read a few audiobooks so far in the last few months. Actually more than a few. Catch 22. It's a great book. Really great satire. Looks like we got a few more comments here. But let me know your guys' favorite books that you've read this year. The ones that have been most impactful, whether it was your first time or you're rereading them. 2 Ask Me Anything questions for Benjamin. Favorite word, and do you sing or play an instrument? Favorite word. Well, I'll start with the second one because that's easy. Yes, I do. I actually went to a fine arts school before in high school, and most of my close friends are from high school, at least. Very serious musicians. Many of them went on to study professionally. I never went on to study professionally. I would consider myself a reasonably serious musician. I play guitar, I play piano, I sing. I've thought about maybe having like a side channel where I just do like Jim Croce songs or something like that, but we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition. I am definitely a big music fan. Big on classical music and jazz. I'm hard to pick genres. Similar to my book tastes, it's kind of all over the place. This is probably pretty common for many writers, but yes, I am a musician. I guess I can consider myself a musician. I consider anyone who plays music to be a musician, and who does it for the love of music. The second one, my favorite word. Man, I wish I had a better answer for this. I really should have a better answer for this. One of my least favorite words is literally, because every time everyone uses literally, it's it's not literally. So that one definitely. Like is another one that drives me bonkers. This is hard. What is my favorite word? I honestly, I can honestly say I haven't thought about this before. It's like asking my favorite color. I've got too many. There's too many to pick from. I used to like sanctimonious a lot as a kid. I always thought that was a good word, but I wouldn't say that's my favorite. Um, what are your guys' favorite words? I want to hear this in the comments. After you guys list your favorite books, I want to hear your favorite words, and then we'll see if anything comes to me that's a better answer. Um, Don Quixote, awesome. That's a good one. Nancy Drew, yes, awesome. A manga series called Cheese Sweet Home, which was cute. Interesting. Yeah. I actually, I don't know if this would be surprising or not surprising, but I'm a pretty big anime fan, pretty big manga fan as well. Um, all things considered, I'm very big into Japanese literature. Yasunori Kawabata is one of my favorite writers. I got to do a video at some point on his writing. Um, Haruki Murakami is kind of a more modern. He's not as quintessentially Japanese, but he has Japanese elements for sure. Um, Yukio Mishima is a writer that I really like, although he's crazy and his history, his story, his politics are insane, but they also are part of the I don't know the what makes him who he is, and he can write like nobody, right? He's just one of the greatest writers. And then there's a lot of one-off books as well in Japan that are written just by wonderful writers. I would say older Japanese cinema, like the golden age of Japanese cinema, is just mind-boggling in Kurosawa and whatnot. It's amazing. Obviously draws a lot from Shakespeare and classic literature as well. And so I love that interplay, that conversation of cultures, particularly because Japan is such an isolated culture historically, and yet when you have these influences that finally do come into Japan, classic literature just really resonates with this culture in a way that makes it super relevant to me and super interesting. My father also lived in Japan for several years, so I have kind of a connection there in that back in like the 60s when he was a kid. So definitely a place that I would like to visit at some point in my life. And yeah, in terms of manga and in terms of anime, I think that in terms of anime, I think Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is amazing. I think that Cowboy Bebop is really good. The Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of the greatest for sure, but there are so many to pick from. Um, Akira is one of the great mangas and then animes as well. Films, Ghost in the Shell as well. There's so many compelling stories in the science fiction genre in particular, in the mechatronic kind of genre. Anyways, I'm gonna go off this tangent because I'm not sure. Probably nobody's interested in this audience, or maybe some people are. I have no idea. That's not really what I normally talk about, but there you go. A little bit of insight. The Gulag Archipelago, Lord of the Rings, about 100 pages of Chekhov short stories. The Steppe, The Duel, The Unknown Man, and Gogol's Dead Soul. Wow, you went all in on Russia. That's a great thing to do this year. Dead Souls is great. Gogol's insane, in a good way. I mean that in a good way. Chekhov is one of my favorite writers. I almost considered for my Desert Island video just having the collected works of Chekhov as one of the choices. And I think that would be one that I would put. I said a lot in the last couple sentences. That's not normal. I apologize. I will try not to do that in the future. Gulag Archipelago. Yeah, Solnitsyn's amazing. Lord of the Rings is not Russian, but definitely a good fit in there. Halfway through 100 Years of Solitude. That's great. First time of all of the other ones are first time except for Lord of the Rings. A question, what was your least favorite word? Yeah, that's a good one. I said before like, or what was the other one? Literally. Discombobulated is a good word. That's a really good one. If I can talk about Alice Munro in some video, yeah, absolutely. Have to do that in the future. I gotta read more Munro. I've read some Munro and she's amazing, but definitely one that I will touch on. Zeitgeist as a favorite word. That is a good word. Well, once we open the realm into German philosophical terms, then that would be a good one. Yeah, I guess if we're actually looking into favorite words, are we talking in the English language? Because I have words that are most semantically rich for me, most resonant with me, but they're not always words that I would use in my writing. They would be words maybe that were of a spiritual caliber or something like that. So it's a good question. Dark Matter. I haven't read that book, but it sounds great. A few of my favorite books this year: Oliver Twist, King Sorrow by Joe Hill, Christine, Stephen King, Cujo, Stephen King. Brother, amazing. Sounds great. One of my favorite words is endeavor. That's a good word. Currently reading 11/22/63. That's a great book. Really, really good. Yukio Mishima. You read him in Japanese? Wow. Are you Japanese, or did you just learn Japanese and then read Mishima? Because that would be insane. Amazing. My favorite book of the year is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. Yeah, I really enjoy Jonathan Haidt's work. I think he's a great writer and very articulate and very kind of wise in his observations and his prognoses for what we can do to get rid of this social media craze, or not get rid of, better navigate this social media craze. Favorite word is indeed. Good, good. Mindset. I read Will Prescribe You a Cat by a Japanese author. That sounds amazing. There's so many great Japanese writers. My usual reads at my age. Mattingly and the Armada, or At the Armada. Foot. I gotta re-show that one. DHF's Albion Seed, McPhee, John Graves. Okay, some of these I've read, some of these I haven't. These are good ones. I loved Night Train to the Stars. I haven't read that one, but I've heard of it. It sounds very compelling. Do I have any favorite fantasy books? Yeah, I love fantasy. Lord of the Rings, but that's not an interesting answer, perhaps. I honestly think that it's where the fantasy genre, one of the great works of the fantasy genre, The Once and Future King, Beowulf, the classics of fantasy, I enjoy reading, absolutely. More modern fantasy, there's a few for sure. There's many books, I would say, that would fall in the fantasy genre. But in terms of super recent fantasy books, I'm probably not as well read as I could be. I have to think about what my other favorite ones, but definitely top one would be Lord of the Rings. Yeah, your 6-month reread of Lord of the Rings, you have to do that. Okay, you were born and raised in Japan. That makes a difference. Least favorite spelling for word is holistic, since it should start with a W. Holistic. Yeah. This is definitely, man, I still don't really have a good answer to my favorite book, my favorite word, and this is actually bothering me. So this is going to be something that I'm going to think about, and next time I'm asked this question, I'm going to have some good answers. You better believe that. So don't worry, I will have some good answers when it comes to my favorite words. This was awesome, guys. We're about at the 44-minute mark here, so I'm going to wrap things up at the end of the next couple of minutes here so that I have time to move on to the book club meeting. And for those of you who want to join, I hope to have everyone is already in the book club. And if you want to join the book club, I'd encourage you to join us. It's a lot of fun. No pressure, of course, but we do read 2 books every month, a classic book and a children's work of literature, which also ends up being a classic book. It's a lot of fun. So that'll be really, really great to talk with some people about Watership Down for the next hour or so. And yeah, it's been a pleasure having all you guys here. It's been a lot of fun. And let me know in the future, actually, just before I wrap things up here. I'm very interested in continuing on this series of top genres, or top books by genre. So if you guys have any genres that you like or that you think would be an interesting category for a genre, let me know in comments of videos, or let me know here or whatever. And I'll do my best to integrate those. Hopefully soon. One of the next ones I want to do is the Gothic genre, so stick around for that. That'll probably be next week's video, top Gothic books, and then we'll go from there in future videos. But yeah, Oh, Monica says I keep a journal of amazing words. I'm gonna have to start doing that so that I have a good answer for my next one. But anyways, thank you everyone for joining. I hope that you guys enjoy these live streams. I'm sure they'll evolve as we move forward, but they've been a lot of fun for me so far, and I'm hoping to continue doing them on Fridays again moving forward. So I will see you guys in the next